You think of it as part of every month, a date on a calendar. A small box of supplies in the bathroom you restock without thinking. A mild inconvenience that arrives and passes and arrives again. Now picture a woman who goes years without a single period. Nothing is wrong with her. She is healthy, strong, in the prime of her life. And for almost the entire history of our species, she was the ordinary one. Not you. Here is the truth almost no one tells you about your ancestors. They did not endure more periods than modern women do. They had far, far fewer. How many fewer? Stay with this. The number is stranger than you think. A woman alive today, in a wealthy modern country, can expect to menstruate around 400 times before it ends. For most of human history, that same woman might have bled only about 100 times in her entire life. Same body, same biology, a completely different life. The thing you treat as a fixed fact of being a woman turns out to be one of the most changeable parts of your story. So what changed? And why did your ancestors bleed so rarely? To answer that, we have to go to a small village in West Africa. In the 1980s, an anthropologist named Beverly Strassman went to live among the Dogon, a farming people in the country of Mali. She stayed for more than 2 years. She wanted to answer a question that sounds simple, but almost no one had ever measured. How often does a woman actually menstruate when she lives without birth control, without modern medicine, eating the food her ancestors ate? The Dogon gave her a rare way to count. When a Dogon woman has her period, she sleeps in a small dwelling at the edge of the village, set aside for exactly that, a menstrual hut. Every night, Strassman recorded who was there. Night after night, month after month, for years. Think about how unusual that data is. Most of human reproduction happens out of sight, unrecorded, lost. Here was a way to watch the natural rhythm of a woman's body directly, without a single survey or guess. And the result was startling. The average Dogon woman menstruated only about 100 times across her whole life. A few years later, a physician and researcher named S. Boyd Eaton tried to estimate the same thing for our Stone Age ancestors. He and his colleagues looked at ovulation, the moment in each cycle when your body releases a single egg. They estimated that a woman in the Paleolithic, the long stretch of the Stone Age when humans lived as hunter-gatherers, ovulated only around 160 times in her life. A modern woman ovulates closer to 450 times. That is a vast gap. So where did all those missing periods go? The answer comes down to 3 things, and every one of them is about how your ancestors actually lived. The first is when periods began. Your first period has a name, menarche, and it does not arrive on a fixed schedule. It waits for your body to be ready. In the 1970s, a Harvard scientist named Rose Frisch noticed that a girl needs to reach a certain amount of body fat before menstruation can start at all. Body fat is stored energy, and a body running low on energy quietly delays the whole system. Today, with rich and constant food, many girls start around the age of 12. In hunter-gatherer groups with leaner bodies and harder lives, it was often closer to 16. That is roughly 4 extra years before the bleeding even begins. The second is pregnancy. Your ancestors did not wait to have 2 children in their 30s. They began younger, and they had more. Each pregnancy is around 9 months with no period at all. Stack several pregnancies across a lifetime, and years of cycles simply disappear. The third is the quiet one. It is breastfeeding. When a woman nurses a baby often enough, her body pauses ovulation entirely. There is a term for it, lactational amenorrhea, and it simply means that steady, frequent breastfeeding switches the cycle off. We know how powerful this was from the work of an anthropologist named Richard Lee, who lived among the Juhansi, hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. Their children nursed for years, not months, day and night, on demand. And through much of that time, the mother had no periods at all. Lee found that births naturally spaced themselves about 4 years apart, with no calendars and no clinics. The breastfeeding itself was holding the line. Now put the 3 together, a period that starts years late, pregnancy after pregnancy, and between them, long seasons of breastfeeding with no bleeding at all. Add it up across a whole life, and you do not get 400 periods. You get 100. Suddenly, the number makes sense, so let us go back to that hut at the edge of the village and ask the real question. When a period did come, what was it actually like? Strip away the products you know, and you are left with the body and whatever the land provides. We have to be honest here, because this is where the evidence goes quiet. Soft moss, animal hide, Bundled plant fiber, folded grass. These were almost certainly used across many cultures in many ways, but none of them survive. Moss rots, hide decays. No tampon lasts 20,000 years in the ground. Archaeology, which can hand us a stone blade or a painted cave wall, goes almost completely silent on this one ordinary human experience. We are left to piece it together from biology and from the living people who still remember the old ways. But the materials may be the smallest part of the story. Picture the hut itself. It is not only a place to bleed. It is a place to rest, set apart from the constant work of the day. It is where the women of the village overlap, where an older woman sits beside a younger one, where knowledge about bodies and birth and pain is handed down with no book and no doctor. For a few days the hardest labor stops. The water hauling, the grinding, the endless tending of children, all of it pauses. In a life with almost no rest, this was rest. And here is where you have to be careful with your modern eyes. It is easy to look at a menstrual hut and see only exile, separation. A woman pushed to the edge because her body is treated as unclean. And in some places, at some times, that shame was real, and we should not pretend otherwise, but that is not the whole of it. For many women, those same days were quiet and restful and full of the company of other women, in a life that rarely offered any of the three. The same wall can be a cage or a shelter, depending entirely on who is telling the story. Which one was it? Often, it was both at once. Now for the twist that changes everything. We tend to assume that our ancestors had the hard version of menstruation, and that modern life, with its products and its medicine, finally fixed it. But look again at the numbers. 100 periods then. 400 periods now. The strange, extreme, historically unusual experience is not theirs. It is yours. Your body was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years to ovulate rarely. To start late, to spend long stretches pregnant or nursing, to bleed only now and then. That was the design. Modern life quietly broke every part of that pattern. We are well fed, so periods start early. We have fewer children, and later, we almost never nurse for years. And so the cycle that was built to rest now runs and runs and runs, hundreds of times more than the body ever expected. The researchers who first measured this were not just collecting trivia. S. Boyd Eaton and others pointed out that this flood of cycles may carry a real cost, that certain cancers of the female reproductive system appear linked to a lifetime of constant ovulation, a burden no ancestor ever carried. That is not a reason for fear, and it is not medical advice. It is a window. It shows you how far an ordinary modern life has drifted from the ancient body that is still running it, because that is the quiet fact underneath all of this. The woman in the hut and the woman with the calendar app are the same creature. The same ancient machinery passed down unbroken. One of them was living in the world it was built for. The other is running that machinery in a world it never saw coming. So the next time it arrives, that small, ordinary monthly event, you might think of her. The healthy woman who could go years without it, and never once thought that strange. It was never just part of every month. For almost everyone who came before you, it was a rare and quiet season. And your body, faithful and unchanged, is still keeping a calendar for a world that no longer exists.